Alrighty, folks, are you ready to rock? Cause I am. Let me pop over here and let you see me. Super excited for today. Hello, and welcome to Adobe Live. My name is VooDoo Val, and I am going to be your host yet again this morning for another Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge, and I'm super excited about this one. This is going to be fun. All of our challenges for this set so far have been centered around our favorite pop culture shows from streaming services and things, and today is going to be no different. We're actually going to be diving into a little bit of Lightroom as well as Photoshop. We're going to be editing some photos and then bringing them into Photoshop with the Edit in Photoshop feature to add some finishing touches and make a cool graphic with our photos. And the vibe we're going for the inspiration that we are taking is coming from Bridgerton. Bridgerton has a lot of like super saturated colors, really lovely kind of dreamy atmosphere to a lot of the branding and the show itself. And so I thought it would be cool to take kind of a dreary historical portrait and transform that into something that is very bright, very saturated compared to the original photo, and then make it look like it is a real TV show, a thumbnail for a show that you could click on and watch. So pretty pumped. I'm going to pop over here and show you folks the image that I'm going to be using today. Let me go ahead and snag this. We'll pop over here. Ta-da! So I thought this would be a really great photo to dive into for today because he looks like he could be in Bridgerton, and I also thought that while he is in kind of a setting, it leaves room with that kind of plain background for us to do a little bit of fancy work with the photo and kind of transform it into something that is really unique. So I'm going to go ahead, for those of you who are watching this live, I'm going to throw that link in the chat for you. This is a free image from the free section of Adobe Stock. There are plenty of really awesome portraits and things that you folks could use for this project, however, that you can check out. All I did was search historical portrait in the free section, and it came up with a lot of really cool subject matter and images, which would be a great choice for this. First off, though, what I'm going to do, let me pop over here real quick and just make sure that we have our photo prepped properly. Okay. I'm going to open Lightroom real quick, and the first thing before we dive into the meat of our actual editing, I do want to show you this page. So when you open Lightroom, there are a lot of things that you can kind of explore over here on the left-hand side, but for those of you who are new to Lightroom, who have never used it before and want to get the hang of using some of the tools and things, if you hit the little light bulb button here that says learn, it will bring you to a bunch of really awesome tutorials and things that can help you get more familiar with the tools, as I said, transforming photos. And so you can kind of choose one that you like. That kind of helps you create a photo effect that you appreciate. And it will kind of bring up this photo and help walk you through how to get to the end product that you see in the side-by-side comparison thumbnail. But we are not going to do a tutorial today. I just want to make sure that I point this out. We are actually going to edit our photo. So I'm going to go back here and pull up our gentleman here, and we're not going to be too heavily detailed in Lightroom today. All I want to do is use Lightroom for the purpose of kind of making this brighter and a little more saturated. So I'm just going to come up here to my edit tools, and I'm going to start with our light here. Now, one thing that I want to point out when you're working in Lightroom, and this is a mistake that I used to make all the time when editing in Lightroom, and a mistake that I've actually made recently. It's something that's very easy to do, and that is that, you know, when you're messing with the sliders, number one, a lot of people will think that they have to use every single slider, and a lot of people will also feel like when they use the sliders, they have to make the change really dramatic because, you know, you want to transform your photo, But honestly, you know, we can crank the exposure up on this if we want to, and if you slide it all the way over, you get a dramatic effect. But I think, in my experience, that when you're using Lightroom, less is more in a lot of ways, because this is a great photo that we have here. We don't need this to be wild and crazy. We just need it to be, oops, there we go. I don't want to rotate that. We just need it to be transformed enough to fit our needs, and we don't want to, you know, blow the colors out and make it crazy. So what we can do is we can work a little bit with our contrast because it seems a little hazy. And I can come down in here to the whites and blacks and see if I crank down the blacks just a little bit, just to kind of make that a little more sharp. I think that will work. We can also bump the highlights just a little bit. And I mean, I guess you could do that if you cranked the contrast up super high, but I kind of like to come in to highlight, shadows, whites and blacks, and tweak those things a little bit instead of just cranking up the exposure and cranking up the contrast and all of that. And you can also, this little button which we have down here will allow you to preview what you had before versus the edits that you have applied. So if I go ahead and click that, you can see not really very much that I've done over here, but I think you can really see the difference. So just tiny little changes go a long way. So it's made it a lot more visible. It's kind of brought a lot of these details out, given it a nice contrast without it being it kind of ruining the integrity of our original image. Hazy, maybe the dehaze. Yes, we could use the dehaze. That's actually an excellent point. You could come down here if I scroll all the way down into, yeah, let's see, let me find our effects. So yeah, you could use dehaze if you wanted to. That would work. You could totally use dehaze, but for here, you know, dehaze does make this image a little darker, and we do want it to be bright compared to the original photo. So in this case, I think instead of using dehaze, that just editing the contrast a little bit and messing with the highlights and the blacks works for me. Next, we can kind of jump into our color. Now, I want this to be warmer. I think a lot of the images from Bridgerton are quite warm. What we don't want to do, though, is, you know, if I crank this up, it's pretty warm. It makes everything very warm, but it also starts to make everything green and sepia and yellow, and I really don't think that that's the vibe we want to go for. So just cranking that up a tiny bit, I think works. You can see that it's already like quite bright compared to that. You could also crank up the vibrance just a little bit if you wanted to. I don't really think that is a big deal for this one. I guess you could mess with the tint, and the tint does, you know, add, well, we've got it kind of on a warmer temperature here. If we add temp, it does kind of bring back some of those reds if we crank it to the side. I don't want to bring it to green because then you can see we get into that weird mode where all of a sudden our canvas is transforming into green, and we don't want that. So if I just crank that temp up just a little bit, you can see that it brings back the skin tones and makes it look a lot more natural, and that will work for me. So I'll just leave that on like a 20, and we might come back and mess with that later, but that is good there for me. Now next we have color mixer and color grading, and color mixer is something that I do use, but I kind of start with the color grading first. That's just my personal preference, because I feel like this changes the color and the atmosphere of a piece overall in a way that is a better starting point for me personally as far as formulating how I'm going to change my photo. And then I will come in with color mixer later if I feel like individual colors need to be changed. So just a quick tip, as you go through your color grading, you can see your shadows, highlights, and midtones here, but you can also change the view of this. So if I just want to look at shadows, or just look at midtones, or just look at highlights, I can do that. I can also edit global colors if I want, and come back to my three here, but I think what I'm going to do is just look at these individually, and I do like to start with shadows, especially for an image like this where there's a lot of stuff kind of shrouded in shadow, just to make sure that everything is cohesive. So if I start kind of moving this around, you can see how it transforms the color, but we don't want it to be that crazy saturated, honestly. So the closer we get into the center here, the more subtle those changes become. And also, if I release my selection here where I've placed it, I can also click it again, and you can see that it'll drag along a linear plane here, so that I'm not, you know, going out in different directions and stuff. If I find that, like, okay, I like this warm here, I think that that, you know, adds a lot of substance to my piece, then I can release and click again, and you can see how I can drift along just that color that I have selected and change it that way. And I actually do like this a lot. I feel like it adds some good warmth to this, and then I can kind of peek and see. And you can see how, just how clear this has become, just how warm it has become. And I don't think that it looks like I've heavily edited this photo. And we can cycle through, we can go into midtones, we can kind of do the same thing. With the midtones, I don't know how crazy I really want to be with this. A lot of these are pretty saturated. Maybe our midtones can be more along a red if we want. I feel like that looks not bad. It's just a very subtle change, but I think it works wonders for the brown in our leather chair and our skin tones. And then with the highlights, I'm wondering if the highlights should be kind of a different color. I almost like a blue for our highlights, but really it's up to you. I suppose we could still do like more of a bright yellow, which actually seems to lend itself pretty well now that I'm seeing it. But it's really up to you and whatever image that you choose. Like I said, we're just kind of tweaking this image here in Lightroom. We're not trying to be crazy and intricate with it, just trying to make it the kind of photo that represents the atmosphere we're going for our project, and we can kind of peek at it. And I like the changes. They're not wild, they're not crazy. It's not, you know, I feel like if you looked at this, you'd probably think that this is how the photo was taken. It doesn't look like it's been edited so far that it, you know, it's low quality, that sort of thing. And then if I want to, I can come into Color Mixer, as I said, and we can select some things. So if I wanted to grab this red, maybe I could change it a little bit. You can see though that it's not really kind of a wild change. And you kind of have to, you know, depending on the photo that you're using, you kind of have to go through and see which colors really should be tweaked. I don't know that I'll change too much in this, honestly. We don't have a lot of super saturated chunks of color in this image. You can see here only as I get to like the end of the spectrum with our blue does that background start to really transform. And I might add a little bit of that warmer tone in there just because I think that looks kind of nice. But I think that this will do it. I don't want to be crazy with it. I think this will work, honestly. You could go into effects and alter the texture and clarity and all that stuff if you want. You can add a vignette if you think that works for you. I do not want to add a vignette or any of that though, because we're going to do some cool effects in Photoshop utilizing a lot of this background here, and I would like to leave it as intact as I possibly can. You can come in here and you can share it, you can save it as a JPEG if you want, but if you know that you're going to be editing it in Photoshop, you can hit this little 3 dots here and just say edit in Photoshop, which we will do. And I am going to go ahead and open that up. It should give it a little time to think, and it should pop it open for us if we can. Hello? It's thinking. I can see in my taskbar it's thinking. Give it a sec. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make our, as it loads up in here, we're going to make our image a little taller. We're going to alter our cropping of our image, and we are going to kind of extend that background with content aware fill up so that it looks like it's more of a portrait ratio photo rather than just kind of a square or widescreen there. And we're going to add some graphics on it, as I mentioned earlier, to make it look like this is a thumbnail of sorts, for a show that you could open, and watch, you know, on Netflix or Amazon Prime or wherever. And it is thinking, let me pop over, I'm going to see, I'm going to pop over to my face cam real quick and just take a peek at this because it's doing a little, having a little think. And I hope it's not stuck because that would be unfortunate. Luckily for you guys, I did Martha Stewart you, so if it comes to that, I can pull up the image. In fact, I might do that. Let me, I'm gonna pull up the one that I have edited, only because I don't want it to think too hard. And I am running, keep in mind, I'm running a lot of software on my computer right now because I'm streaming. And so that can go into it as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead, since I have altered a version of our photo before, I will use that one that I did previously. And just know that when you open your Lightroom and you hit the Edit in Photoshop button, it will allow you to do so. So I've got our warmer image here, and what I'm gonna do is extend our canvas just a tad. And I'm gonna do that by hitting C on my keyboard. And I think what I'd like to do is, if I can, is just kind of drag this up like so, because I'm going to put some graphics up top here. And I'm not going to be picky about how I like the exact size of the canvas here with this. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it like that. I think that that's going to work because it's got kind of the rough idea of what I want, and I'll go ahead and hit enter. And so now I have kind of a more portrait oriented image canvas here, and we are going to fill this other top part here, and make it look like the wall simply extends. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm just, with my rectangular marquee tool, I'm going to select a rectangle that will fill in that space just like so. And I'm going to come up to edit and content aware fill. And so this opens up our content aware fill space here, and what I want it to do, you can see it's really already done this for us. You can see the preview here as it just kind of brings that space up, and it's kind of thought around our subject. But if you open this up to do content aware fill for yourself and you're using a different image than me and it doesn't work so well, and you start getting weird samples of part of your subject or other portions of the image that don't look good, you can always come in and you can start subtracting from the places and make sure that whatever the green is covering basically is what it's sampling from. So you could come in and just go ahead and remove from what Adobe is like, do you want this in the space you have selected? And then it will only select from whatever is highlighted green. And that works for me. You can come in and change the settings, the fill settings here, change the color adaptation to suit your image. I really don't have to change much with this one because it's kind of auto done this very, very well for me. You can change the rotation adaptation if you feel like that is necessary for you, but for the most part, I don't really have to edit this much. It's done a very good job. And then I can tell it to output to a new layer, output to the current layer, or duplicate the layer. And I typically like to output to a new layer, honestly, because then if I decide later on that I really don't like it, then that fill is separate. So I'm going to leave it on new layer, and I'm going to hit apply, and I'm going to hit OK. And you can see as I zoom out here, let's go ahead and Control D or Command D if you're working on a Mac, to deselect, and you can see now I've got my photo and this beautiful background that really flawlessly looks like the photo always was like this, which is really, really cool. Oh my God, Val, you prepared and rehearsed. I did, because I'm using a lot of different programs, and I knew I was going to be using content aware fill and all that stuff, and just in case we had a processing thing where something took a little too long, I didn't want to have to kind of wait around for my machine to think. So we have our image. I'm going to go ahead and select these layers and convert them to Smart Object. so that it's just all one solid image for us. And I'm going to rename this man so I can see that. And then we're going to make this look like a thumbnail for a streaming service and something that you could select if you would like to watch the show. So I'm going to do that quickly with just some rectangles. I'm going to put a little rectangle in the corner here, and I want this to be like as bright red as we can make it, like this. And I'm going to make sure by dragging my little handles here all the way to the corners to make sure that's sharp. And then I'm going to alter this a little bit. So I'm going to right click. Let's Control T or Command T to free transform. I'll right click it and I'm just going to say skew, and I'm going to bring this corner up like so, because I just want it to be a shape like that. And we will go ahead and hit enter. There we go. So we've got a little tag in the corner there. I'm sure this is a little recognizable to some of you. And then we're going to make a little streaming service logo right here, and it's going to be themed around maybe Netflix and Adobe. So I'm going to go ahead and drag out another rectangle like this. We will make sure that our corners are sharp. And then I'll Control T to free transform, right click to skew, and I'm just going to bring that over like so. Yes, convert it to a life shape, and I will Control or Command J to duplicate that, Control T to free transform, and I'm going to bump this over just so that really looks like an A, sort of. And we are going to, I'm going to Control or Command H to hide my guide so I can really look at this and make sure that it is aligned. Hit enter. I'll bring that underneath. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rasterize those layers and lock their transparency. So I can come in with my brush. I've just hit B on my keyboard, can right click, make sure I have a soft round pressure opacity brush set to dissolve. And I am going to actually come in and just start tapping to give this a little bit of depth. Boom. So there is our Adobe Netflix type logo, which we will put in the corner, which I think that looks pretty cool. How are we doing on time? We got about 3.5 minutes, so we are doing good. So we've got our little logo, we've got a little corner banner here, and then the next thing I want to do is, I'm sure this is familiar, is add a little graphic here that will show anyone who's looking at our show thumbnail that there are new episodes available for you to watch if you would like to. I'm also going to rename my layers here. Let's call this logo, and let's call this let's see, banner. And then this is going to be called I'm going to put in for announcement. There we go. And then I am going to hit T on my keyboard to access my type tool. And I'm going to click here, make sure that the color is set to white, and I'm going to write something like new seasons or new season. And I'm going to use Montserrat. Montserrat is an Adobe font, which you can totally use if you just download it from Adobe Fonts. It's a great one. And it kind of looks like I think this is supposed to look, you know, this kind of vibe. And I'm just going to place that right there, make sure it's aligned, snap to center. I don't think our announcement bar here is snap to center though, so I'm just going to make sure that that is. Boom. So we've got a new season available of our show, and the last thing we need to do is kind of add some text to our flag and make a title for our show. And I feel like our show should definitely be called Adobeton. You know, let me go ahead and rename this group just so that that's all grouped together. Let's call this Adobeton, because I feel like that's what we need to do. So let's say Adobeton. It's a little parody here of our inspiration, and I would like to change this to like a nice, I think Lust is a great font for this, something like that. and we'll make that white, and we can just kind of put that right there. We are at the end of our time, and I would like to kind of show you the one that I finished so you can see like the cool stuff that you could kind of do with glyphs. Like I have highlighted the in here, and I can go into my font and make it fancy, you know, to really make like a nice title here. And I'm gonna pull up my Adobe tin finished product here. Let me go ahead and boom. There is my Adobe tin from VooDoo Val, who brought you the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge, #1 in TV live streams today, September 22nd, only on Adobe Live. So I hope that you folks like this. This was a great, a lot of fun for me to do. Very easy to edit things in Photoshop or edit things in Lightroom, bring them over to Photoshop and jazz them up. It's been a blast. We're going to be back tomorrow with a cosplay day, community day. I'm gonna go over all of the awesome stuff that you folks have been creating. We'll take a look at it, give some feedback, and I always do costumes on the last day. So if you folks want to dress up, do some cosplay, post some pictures in the Discord, that would be great. But until then, I'm taking off, and I'll see you folks next time.